Thank you very much, Sue. And welcome to you all, but a particular welcome to those who are new. Put up your hand if you've never been to one of these days. Fantastic. I hope you won't be disappointed. I know you won't be disappointed because you're with your colleagues, but this has become a very significant day in the life of the work we do in our schools. One of the great things I've found over the last decade as we come to these things, the refreshing honesty when I bump into everyone. The first comment I got is, "What have you done to your head?" And you got a new haircut? I said, "No." And somebody then said, "Oh, you must have done your hair for a change." So I've got to pay attention to my grooming. But in preparing for today, I was reflecting, 2017 is actually an important year in my professional career. I remember going back to when I first started teaching, and I received my first superannuation notification, and it had how much I would be worth when I retired in the year 2017. And I thought to myself, well, that'll never happen. Well, we got to 2017, but retirement is not on the horizon at the moment. But it seemed so long and so far away, yet here it was in a blink of an eye. And it's been a fantastic journey. I'm not going to take up much of your time because you'll have on your tables a very brief paper that picks up the major themes that I want to touch on, as I normally do as we begin this year together. It's a bit of a departure. There are more graphs than there is printing for a change, and it's not an indication of what I think of your capacity and capabilities. But what we have tried to do is condense into a structure, and I'll talk about it a little bit in my presentation about what it means, but it shows you where we've come from and where we're positioning ourselves to continue to respond to the challenges that our school communities present us each and every day. And that's behind the decision around every learner, every day. You know we've been searching for the precision and the focus, and it's standing in such good stead. Our strategic intent is about improving the learning of each child, remember the word each, and having professionally rewarding working lives for our teachers. That's our intent. So I hope that every teacher and every employee in our schools knows what that intent is. But if they want to know how the rubber hits the road, what's that actually mean? It means every learner, every day. Because that's what we need to do to ensure that they get their quality Catholic schooling. Right embedded in the paper several points that I'm not going to talk about specifically, but I think will help us move forward as we address that issue of every student, every day. For those of you who've had the time or even bothered to read the news over the last month, as we've got away from the American situation, there's been much comment about education, the usual stuff you'd know. Even this morning I hear something that I find spectacularly interesting, the feminisation of physics. That was an interesting comment. Some academics come out and said they're dumbing down the curriculum by feminising physics. I didn't know that was possible. Anyway, I have to ask Christine, you might be able to explain it to me. The comments about the schools and the challenges, etc. The thing I'm talking about. There have been several articles on what we need to do to improve our schools. So all that's been taking place. And I want to say to you, while it's important, it's really noise. It's not the main game. And what we're on about here is the main game. And always, that main game, this is at the centre of what we do. Every year I try and search for some image that speaks to me about the centrality of the work we do. Last year I was using the Jesus Christ, the wonderful mosaic in Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, which is the most vibrant expression that you see, both old and new. You can't help but be drawn into it. And I've gone back to World Youth Day in Rio and seeing this wonderful, just happened to stumble upon this photo of the experience I had at the statue of Christ the Redeemer. And the thing that speaks to me about that statue, besides its immense size, it's good to be next to somebody like me, was the fact that the arms outstretched, welcoming. It's a welcoming. Come to me. Yet it's almost like, and I will encircle you, and I will support you. And that is at the central experience of our schools. That's what the number one point in the paper talks about, the experience of the lived gospel. If every child in our school can talk about their image of Jesus in their lives, we will have been successful as part of our evangelising mission for the Catholic Church. That's mine. You've got yours. And let's make sure our kids understand that. So it's that deeply personal thing. And it builds on what we've been talking about before, about the intentional discipleship that each and every one of us need to continue to understand, to grow and to nurture. And that's what we will be setting ourselves when we say every day, every learner. The subtlety will not be lost on you. Every learner. It's not just the students. It's not just, in fact, the teachers in our schools. It's the community. Because one thing that we do know, one thing that's been coming through in some of that noise I talked to you about, is the critical role of the education of our parent community. Because sometimes we have a largely uneducated and ill-prepared community to know how to parent students. We do our best within the school and we do our best in outreach, and you'll see some of that later on. But it's every learner every day, and do not miss that opportunity so that every boy and girl will be able to say, this is my image, this is what happens in my life. In our learning spaces, in each one of our schools, everything is connected. You might look at that and say, well, isn't that wonderful? We've got technology in our schools and we're looking after those delightful young students out at Kirinari, out at Xavier. Isn't that a fantastic experience for them? What you are not seeing is the connectivity in that. That did not happen by accident. That happened firstly by a group of professional teachers saying we need to reach out to these young boys and girls. They can experience a quality Catholic schooling. How do we ensure that? They asked those questions. They were dissatisfied with what they were doing and how they were doing it. They were dissatisfied with the responses of the kids. So rather than just sit back and say, well, we've done our best, through those connections, they collaborated together. At the heart of what we do of contemporary teachers is collaboration, sharing our work. They asked themselves those questions, posed themselves the questions, and then sought to find the answers. And so that it led them down to a different journey to discover the use of technologies and the robot buddy working in the schools. The hard work was first of all asking the question, the research wasn't difficult, acquiring the robot and the technology was not difficult. All those things were simple. What was the hardest part? Sitting down and working out what they needed the robot to do. If it was going to be an addition to or an augmentation of the work they do, how do we get this robot? Because nobody's ever done this before. And guess what? They worked it out. And then they did another easy part. They got it programmed. They programmed it, and now they know how to learn to program it, and in fact even the kids can program that. And we've got a wonderful video probably on our website. You can have a look and see the results of the work that can happen when you have an understanding of this deep connection So there's the connection to the kids, there's connection to their learning, it's connection to their professional experience and expertise. It was working within the school, working with colleagues in our office around the technology, and ultimately the hard grunt that they had to do themselves was designing the learning framework that delivered a world-class learning experience for the young boys and girls in their schools. So there are deeply practical implications of this connection and every day, every learner. You've seen several iterations of this, and going back at previous meetings where we've talked about our theory of actions. One of the first things we worked on generating was to describe how we go about this work, built on why and what we know and the evidence. Because we are committed to giving this world-class education and not as some sort of quasi-experiment. So we developed the theory of action. And in one sense, that theory of action is monodimensional. It actually is an inquiry cycle model because it starts with the learner, moves to improving the learning by having good teaching, etc., etc. You know the theory of action as well as I do. And it's that cyclical process of re-engagement with the learner, the teacher, the reflection on learning, the leading, and then the total collaboration. So it's a marriage of theory and practice. So it's a framework to describe how we put kids at the centre, personalised learning, collaborative processes, all those things that are around the connection. And it's given us the structure to move our planning forward and the precision as we've worked through issues of literacy and numeracy, and you'll see the banners up here, the major focus we're having on today. But this takes it to a new level. This really lifts the understanding of the theory of practice, a theory of action, in action. Because it brings together not only the why, but a new way of thinking about the what in transition. I won't start again, Bishop and Father Chris, if that's all right. And it brings together the work we've been doing on the priorities. You would have seen several other, if you go back and look at some of the previous documentation, as we've named the priorities in different quadrants. But here we've drawn it together at the centre about this transforming Catholic schools. And this has been the leap. We've talked for a long time, and the work that we've done here together, about improving what we've been doing. And we've done that well. But I think now it's the time to move away from improving. If we're going to really give that quality, world-class Catholic schooling to our students in our schools, we have to move to transformation, which takes me back to what's at the centre. There's the model. If you want a transformer, you now have a transformer. You know, be brave. He did everything to change the existing models. We heard in the gospel reading this morning, Paul fell off a donkey. He didn't improve the saddle. What did he do? He got up and did something very different. So the resonance and the echoes of the gospel as it is lived are powerful in the work that we do. So when you say this is too difficult or I can't understand it, there's the model. This is the transformation. And we, as part of our evangelising mission of the church, are negligent in our responsibility if we don't take up that challenge. And you bring your professional expertise to it, and here is the link to the model. We'll do it within this model, and we'll do it around ensuring that mission is a lived reality. We'll make sure that our focus is on learning. We will not duck the issue of performance. And we're talking about performance, we're not talking about testing or assessment. Those things are important. And again, I go back to the media at the beginning of the year and late last year, the PISA and TIMS and all those results are out. They are distractors because it's about the performance of the schools. And each school is different by its context, as each of our communities of learners are different. But you cannot say that we therefore can't make judgments or decisions about the performance of the learners and of the school communities, I'm including the teachers in that. So it's around the performance, and that includes our responsibility of being involved in schooling in a secular world. We have accountability requirements in the learning, and it's about the teaching. The mission, it's about the intent. And then finally, I know this word grates with some people, you know, this business terminology, but there is no better word to describe what we do. We have been working very hard behind the scenes. This is like the iceberg. Think of enterprise like the iceberg. There is so much that goes on under the water that you would not see, and that's exactly what needs to happen. You do not need to be involved in negotiations for bandwidth. You do not need to be involved in negotiations about new financial management systems. A whole range of things that are taking place that are highly complex, that are very costly, but ultimately will allow us to do the business in today's world. We want to take from you anything that distracts from your ability to engage in the learning and teaching. That's what enterprise is about. And that's the power of those two circles you saw, the enterprise and the leading. And that this diagram encompasses that. And at the intersection, where we've got transforming Catholic schools, at the intersection is this very day. This is the system leader day. This is where we all get together and say, yes, that works, that doesn't, this is what we need to do. That's where you have your voice, so that we can truly say it's a collaborative process. The office major responsibility is not the learning. We do a little bit of the teaching, but it's not the learning. Our major responsibility is that infrastructure underneath that allows you each and every day to go about and do the work you do. And of course, it's like all good learning and teaching, it's a work in progress. So these are the dot points that I've got for you to reflect on. They are not immutable. They are not the perfect ones. There are many. Go back and have a look at the media if you want to. There are many that you'll find. There was a great article in last Saturday's Herald about a school on the south coast that have done something. We got this list of what can happen. But it's the ones that we will be talking about in terms of this System Leader Day. You can add to it, by all means. But I hope it gives you something to engage in a dialogue with your school communities. I think there's a lot that you can do with your parents. As I've mentioned before about the importance of not ignoring the parent education in this. Even that first one, as I've tried to unpack it, is powerful. But the whole issue, even at the end, about consolidating an innovative mindset, which is about the transformation, which links to the gospel as well, but about the transformation and how we're going about the change. You know sometimes the heat that's on about, oh, the classroom doesn't look like the school I went to. Have you had any of that comment? So how do you engage in that? Well, it's about innovation, it's about change, but don't be worried. You know, the church has been involved in this for 2 millennia now, as it's responded to the signs of the time. So there is much that you can do, and we can do collectively, and we'll have that unified voice. We won't give you the blueprint, but we're asking you to engage. In bringing this to some sort of close, this, I think I drive them crazy in my office with this. I think this is just one of the most powerful things that I've ever read from and heard from an orator. But, you know, the fierce urgency of the now. Now will not exist in 5 minutes. It's a missed opportunity. Martin Luther King was speaking in a context very different to the context that we're talking about education. but at the very heart they were the same. He's talking about changing hearts and minds. And it's the fierce urgency of doing it now. Not tomorrow, not next year when we're better prepared, when we're ready, not when we get this done, not when we get that done. We've got to do it now. If we could get that sense of I don't want to use the word structured, but a planned urgency, I think we'll be doing our school communities a great favour. But we do that mindful of the framework in which we can deliver this. We don't have to go out and find new ways of doing it. And please don't take anything I've said to you here this morning as being any way being critical of what we have been doing. This is an addition to. I know that you think it's important. I know that you think we need to move quickly. But unless we make that overt commitment and make it plain in our communities and against the structure, we don't want people wandering off the reservation. We want to keep this as a collaborative, connected experience so that it's every learner, every day. Thank you.